This video is going to show you how you can run a crosstab in R. So remember, we always use a crosstab when we want to study the relationship between two categorical variables. Let's go back to the defaulting customer data set and let's see what's in it. So names default tells us variables in here, and there were actually two categorical variables that I'm interested right here. One is the payment type, so that's how the customer pays the bill each month. And then the other one is this default variable. If we do a summary on default, what you're going to see is that this payment type has 4 possible values. Let's go see that over here. You actually get a frequency distribution with that. The default is currently numerical, and therefore R gives you the mean. It's actually, these are all zeros and ones. Okay, so how do you get a crosstab in R? Probably the best way is to use a function called xtabs. So I like to store this in a fitted object called, I like to call it fit, and you just say xtabs, and then you're going to give it a formula. So you just say tilde, payment type plus default, then the data set name. And so the data set name is default. And if you type fit, what you're going to get is is a crosstab, which has the counts. So there were 1,857 people who paid with the book method and defaulted. A nice function to know about with this is you can add margins to a fitted object, and it's a pity that we just kind of lost our frequency distribution from before. So the book has 7801, and you're going to see down here 7801. So we just added, what's called the marginal distributions. So here's the marginal distribution or frequency distribution of payment type. Here's a frequency distribution or marginal distribution of default. Here's the total number of customers. Okay, what if you want to know the percentage who default though? Okay, so what we would do is we'd have to divide 1897 by 7801. Well, there's a function that does this for you. It's called prop.table. And if you do prop.table on this xtabs object, you can say which you want to condition on, the rows or the columns. So if you put a 1 in here, it's going to condition on the rows on the first coordinate. 1 means the first coordinate. We always give the row coordinate first. And so what you're going to see is there's about 24% of people who paid with book defaulted, whereas only about 1% who used checking EFT defaulted. Now you can almost guess what would happen if I put a 2 here. So this is going to condition on the second coordinate or the columns. And so what you're going to see now is that you have percentages in the columns that add up to 1. So let's just go over the interpretation of, for example, this number. This is saying of those who defaulted, so we're in that 1 column, 65% paid with book. Of the ones that defaulted, 29% paid with statement, about 2% paid with check, about 4% paid with credit. So those 4 numbers ought to be adding up to 100. Now, how could we make a bar graph out of this? It's not easy in R, to be honest with you. I kind of prefer Tableau and SPSS on this. Let's just go back to this. I'm going to show you 2 ways, and I think they're both kind of useful to know about. This is really a table, and if I make a bracket here, that means I just want certain coordinates. So I'm going to say comma 2. Okay, so what this is really saying is give me all the rows. So the row coordinate always comes first, but I only want the second column. Okay, so now notice what I have here. So I just have the default rates for each of the payment types. That's probably kind of subtle. To make a bar plot of this, all I do is I type bar plot stick it around that, and we have our bar plot. Okay, I'm going to show you one more method to do exactly the same thing. So sometimes this is what you want to use. Sometimes it's more useful to know the other one. Okay, so we can use another function called tapply. And so tapply computes some, statistic like the mean of one variable broken out by another. So I'm going to also use something called the with command. So with default, so what this means is just use this data frame for everything I'm going to say now. Okay, so with default, we're going to use tapply. And you can look down here. The first thing that comes in is the variable that you want to compute, which is going to be the default variable in the default data frame. I know that's slightly confusing. The next one is the index. So what do we want to break this out by? Well, we want to break it out by payment type. And then the third argument is which function do you want to apply? Well, let's go find the mean. And so you'll see that I get exactly the same three numbers, but the way I got there was slightly different. So here I was using Crosstab. Here I'm really finding the average of default broken out by payment type. So that's useful to know both those methods. Now, how do I get a bar chart? We're going to go do exactly the same thing we did before. We're just going to go put bar plot around this, and then go close the parenthesis over here, and you get exactly the same plot showing the percentage who defaulted with each of these methods.